house, we try to celebrate the little things and the big things. So I love planning a special meal just because. And when it's a family-friendly celebration, I love to choose dishes that I know everyone's going to enjoy. For this festive menu, we're going to start with dessert because sometimes it's actually fun to have a backwards meal with dessert first. If you do that, your kids will think you're a genius. So we're going to make a lemon square, but not like perhaps lemon squares you've known before. No shortbread here. It's more of a brownie texture, and they're just so easy and so delicious. This is something the kids could actually make all by themselves. So we're going to start by zesting 2 lemons. That helps to give these squares their super lemony flavor, but they're not mouth-puckeringly sour, which I like. It's also a square that freezes really, really well. And fun fact, if you go to other countries, I can think of Australia in particular, and someone offers you a slice, they don't mean pie or pizza. That's actually the word they use for squares. And in the US, they tend to call them bars. So kind of interesting. But where I'm from in Nova Scotia, it's always squares. It's good to zest the lemon right before you're going to use it, and try not to get down to the white pith that's under the yellow because it can be bitter tasting. All right, peeking inside my grater, I think I have what I need. Just going to scoop that out, and we're going to add that to our flour. Part of what I love about this recipe is you just mix it in one bowl. No mixing the wet ingredients together and adding to the dry. It's just super, super simple. Now we're going to need some lemon juice. We need about 2 tablespoons. So I got started here. That's just over 1. And we've got the strainer here to catch the seeds. You've probably seen me use this lemon reamer before. You can use a fork instead, or if you've got really strong hands, you can just squeeze. And a tiny bit more. There we go. All right, so we're going to add our sugar next, and salt and baking soda, melted butter, this is Greek yogurt. You could use sour cream instead, and you could absolutely use lactose-free yogurt or non-dairy yogurt if you prefer. However, this recipe does have eggs, so it's not specifically a vegan-friendly recipe. Our lemon juice and the aforementioned eggs will go in next. All right, I'm going to give this a quick mix. And you just want to make sure everything's well blended. As with many cake and muffin batters, you don't want to overwork it, but you want to make sure that it's smooth in this case, and that you obviously can't see any of the flour exposed. Between the lemon zest and juice, I can already smell it, and it's going to be so good. You also want to make sure your eggs are well incorporated, and room temperature eggs help with that. All right, it's that easy. I've got my prepared 8x8 baking pan. Parchment paper just makes it easier to lift them out when they're done. And just scoop it in any which way because you're going to level it afterwards, so it doesn't really matter. All right. I'm going to use this spoon to help me with the leveling, so we'll incorporate that little bit of Greek yogurt. And just push it all the way into the corners and make sure it's not heaped up in the center, and that way it will cook more evenly. A lot of batters will settle on their own, but it's good to give them a helping hand if you can. All right, I'm going to put this one in the oven, and then I'm going to show you the next step, which is to glaze the squares after they're finished baking. All right, we have taken a previously made pan out of the oven and look how great these squares look. Little pro tip for you, I took a sharp knife with a serrated edge and I just trimmed the outside edges off so we have a nice uniform block, and that way every square you cut is going to look perfectly the same. Plus you get to eat the trimmings, so that's another bonus. So we're going to make the glaze that goes on top. It's just powdered sugar and lemon juice. If you like, you can add more zest, but I find that this is zesty enough as it is. So we need about 3 tablespoons of lemon juice for our cup of powdered sugar. And in case you're wondering about using bottled lemon juice for this recipe, I really don't recommend it. It's fine for things like vinaigrettes or pan sauces, but the taste of fresh lemon is just so superior that for a baked good where the lemon is the star of the show, you really want to go for the real thing. And the juice does oxidize as soon as you get it out of the lemon, so it's not a great idea to do it too much ahead of time. To get the best flavor, it should be fresh. Okay, that looks like the amount that we need. If we need more, I can always add more. So I'm going to pour this into my powdered sugar. And because it's going to be runny, you don't need a mixer to beat it the way you do for a thick buttercream. And just stir it until every little speck of powdered sugar is dissolved into the lemon. Check down at the bottom because sometimes it sticks to the bowl, especially if your bowl was a bit warm when you put the sugar into it. All right, I'm happy with that. You can use a whisk as well. I just like using the scraper because then it helps when I go to pour it onto the cake. So you just kind of want to drizzle it on, working from side to side, and then you will have the chance to spread it. And some of it will run off the sides, some will soak into the cake. You just want to make sure you cover the whole top. And then you need to let it set for about 20 minutes, I would say, and then you can cut it into squares and serve it up. So there's your beautiful brownie-like glazed lemon squares.
Most families seem to enjoy homemade macaroni and cheese. While I usually top mine with breadcrumbs and garlic butter, I recently discovered that traditional poultry stuffing or dressing is a stupendous topping for mac and cheese. I'm going to show you how it's done.
If you've ever struggled to line a baking pan with parchment paper, you're going to love this trick. Dip it in hot water or run it under hot running water, crumple it up, then unfold it, and it will be soft and pliable and super easy to press into your pan, and it'll stay in place. Homemade macaroni and cheese is so easy to make. Let me show you how. We're going to start by making the cheese sauce, the foundation. And if you've grown up on Kraft Dinner, you're never going to go back. So we're going to start with some butter. And apologies for the fan noise. That's just what induction burners do. And as soon as the butter has started to melt, we're going to add some flour. You can use gluten-free all-purpose flour. It's totally up to you. And you just need this to make a little thick paste to which the milk and then eventually the cheese will be added. So it's the same as your basic white sauce, but with cheese added in. And with this method, you want to make sure that you give the flour time to cook. It has a very raw taste. If you've ever stuck your finger in flour and tasted it, it doesn't taste very good. But if it cooks in the butter for just about a minute and a half or so, all of a sudden it'll smell like cookies baking, and you know that the flour is cooked. And then you're ready to proceed with your sauce. Okay, our butter's almost melted, so I'm going to sprinkle the flour in. And then it's a good idea to just whisk it fairly consistently while the flour is cooking. Once our minute and a half or so is up, I'll give it a little sniff test, and if it's smelling good, then we'll proceed. All right, let's see how this smells. Smells like cookies. So we're going to add our milk next. I haven't tried making this with non-dairy milk, but I think it would probably work. Just add it in slowly, whisking constantly, and that way you won't get any lumps of flour forming. And now we want to cook this for just a minute or two so that it starts to thicken. And while we're stirring, we're going to add in some seasoning. I really like salt and pepper, but also a little bit of paprika and a little bit of dry mustard. And that might sound like an odd combination, but it just gives the cheese sauce a little bit of zip. Otherwise, it can be a little bit on the plain side. If your family's taste buds aren't ready for that, then just stick with salt and pepper. But not too much salt because we have the butter and the cheese is a bit salty as well. All right, this is starting to thicken, so in go my seasonings. Stir them in, and then we can add the cheese. Just going to give it a little bit more heat. I've used grated old cheddar. I prefer to use a white cheddar for this because I don't want it to have that orange glow reminiscent of boxed macaroni and cheese. I really want it to look different. I know there's white cheddar boxed products out there now. There wasn't when I started making this a long time ago. This is a really great basic dish to teach teenagers how to make. It's the kind of thing that can sustain them for really their whole lives. I've served it to my kids' friends when they were younger, some of whom had never tasted homemade macaroni and cheese, and it was kind of a mind-blowing experience for them. Okay, now we'll put the cheese in. Need a little nudger here. And we should see the sauce bubbling in a moment, and then the cheese will melt. So when it comes to assembling this dish to bake it, you can use a larger casserole dish. This is the quantity for about an 8x8 dish that'll feed 2 generous servings for my family anyway, maybe 4 if kids were younger. I decided a long time ago that I was going to start to do individual portions because there seemed to be a little bit of wrestling over who was getting more topping or not. So that solved that problem. I'm going to turn this way down because our sauce is now bubbling, as you can see, which is perfect. And in fact, I think I can even turn it off. There we go. So I've got 2 oven-safe baking dishes here. And I like ones that are broad. They may not be completely filled to the top, but that way you get topping over the whole thing. So I have some pre-cooked shell macaroni. You can use elbow if you want. I just like this shape. It's a little bit more festive. And we're going to add that to the pot. And this way it gets thoroughly coated in the cheese sauce. And just to make things extra festive, because this is a celebratory meal for the family, we're going to put in some bacon bits as well. I have often put things like peas or chopped kale in my homemade mac and cheese. If your family's cool with that, then have at her. There's really no rules in terms of what you want to put in. Okay, so now we're ready to scoop this into our serving dishes. Put this up the other way, there we go. And you want to just kind of get it even so you get the same amount of sauce and noodles and bacon bits in each one. So I'm going to go back and forth between the 2. Yep, that looks pretty even. There won't be any fighting at the dinner table tonight. My kids are grown, so it's really not a thing, but I remember the days. All right, and now of course we need a topping. So you've seen me make panko breadcrumbs fried up in oil before. That is really great for this. Or I've just got torn bread here like you would use to make stuffing. And I'm going to sprinkle a little garlic powder on that because we really like garlic. Not garlic salt. I don't tend to use that at all, but garlic powder is really great. And then we've got some melted butter. Give that a stir. And the reason for adding the butter is it helps the crumbs brown as they're baking. See, I've got a slightly oversized piece there. I just save up all my ends of bread and keep them in the freezer, and they're perfect for this kind of purpose. And then we're going to spoon the crumbs over top. Generally, I don't recommend assembling ahead of time because the noodles will soak up a lot of the sauce and then your dish can be a little on the dry side. We like our homemade mac and cheese nice and juicy. And you can absolutely use gluten-free bread for this and gluten-free pasta. So it's a great dish if that's something that you need to work towards in your cooking. All right, so they're going to go into the oven for about 15 minutes. What you're looking for is to have the topping nice and brown and have the filling bubbly, and then it'll be ready to devour. So I'll bring it back to you as soon as it's ready. Wow, doesn't this homemade mac and cheese with bacon look fantastic? You're going to be a hero if you serve that for dinner tonight. Yep. Wow, doesn't this homemade mac and cheese look fantastic? You're going to be a hero if you serve this for dinner tonight.
Starting off a family celebration with a festive mocktail is always a fun option. I've got a great homemade lemonade recipe with a few twists that I'm going to show you next.
For a festive drink to go with our special meal, I do try to stay away from things like soda pop or sugar-laden juices. So we're going to make this chai lemonade and control the amount of sugar that's in it. So we're going to start by heating some water. And as soon as it's warm, we're going to start to add in our other seasonings. So I'll put the lid on to help speed that process up. There's lots of chai recipes out there. When I had it in India, there were fennel seeds in it, all kinds of delicious things, but I'm keeping it kind of plain Jane so that it has a broader appeal. So what I'm going to be adding in are whole cloves, cinnamon stick, and cracked green cardamom pods. And the pods have some flavor, but the real flavor comes from these teeny tiny little black seeds. And then we're going to add some slices of fresh ginger. I really like ginger, and it's very, very good for us, good for digestion and all sorts of things. So I'm going to slice it thinly. There's no need to peel it because you're not going to be eating or drinking it. It gets strained out afterwards. Check on our water here. Just turn it up a little bit. And then we're also going to add maple syrup, my sweetener of choice. I have made this with honey and it's been fantastic. And you could also use brown sugar, for example, but try to stay away from those ultra-processed sugars when I can. So I can see we've got a little bit of steam action happening. So in go our spices, our cinnamon stick, our cloves, our cracked cardamom pods, our ginger slices, and now our maple syrup. Just going to give that a little stir so that it all gets mixed in, especially the maple syrup not sticking to the bottom of the pan. And that's all that needs to happen. Now that it's hot, we'll put the lid back on and we'll let it steep for about 20 minutes. And that will help the flavors just infuse. The spices in particular will be really good. So I love to make batches of this chai mix and keep it in the fridge, and you can actually add it to black tea, for example. You would make your strong black tea because you're going to be diluting it with this water mixture. You can add it to warm milk. You can use it for all kinds of things. I've even used it as a flavoring in my baking. So I have this week's jar from my fridge here ready to make our festive drinks. So we're going to need lemon juice, obviously, and as I've mentioned before, freshly squeezed is always best. I've got the remains of a lemon from another recipe here, and I'm just going to give it a squeeze. For the drinks that we're going to make here, 2 of them, probably a tablespoon or 2 is enough. Another benefit of squeezing the lemons freshly is that you get the maximum vitamin C from them. If you squeeze them too far ahead of time, they do start to oxidize and they lose some of their nutritional value. So that's worth remembering. I'm also going to cut some slices to garnish our glasses. It's really never too early to start teaching your kids about what makes things festive, and it doesn't have to be expensive or fancy, just as simple as having candles at the dinner table if they're not going to be rowdy and knock them over, of course, and having a garnished drink, that sort of thing. It really can make them feel special, and it helps them understand sort of some of the civility of eating. Okay, I think that's going to be a good amount of lemon juice. Now you can absolutely add the lemon juice to your jar of chai mix. You need a bigger jar, obviously, but like I said, the potency will go down over time. So to make our drinks, I'm going to put the chai mix in first, and I'm going to fill the glasses just about more than halfway, I think. Are they even? Kids always want them to be even. And then we're going to add our fresh lemon juice. Make sure that's even as well. There we go, right down to the drop. And then instead of straws, we're going to be fun and put cinnamon sticks in. And that can be kind of a fun game. They are capable of being used as straws. And last but not least, we're going to add our lemon slices. That one I sliced a little too much. I'm going to do another one because I want them to look perfect for our special dinner. Tricky when I'm getting down, I'm going to start a new lemon because, like I said, I want it to be perfect. Nice thing about this too is it makes a great mocktail for adults, of course. I'm going to take the seeds out because some people, believe it or not, do like to chew on the lemon slices. I'm not among them. There we go. Our chai spice lemonade is perfect for our special festive just because family dinner. The next time you're planning a little family celebration, even if it's a just because fiesta, why not get everybody involved in making a meal that's as much fun to make as it is to eat? This beautiful homemade macaroni and cheese with bacon will be a hit with everyone. Add in some chai lemonade and lemon squares, and everybody will be smiling by bedtime.